2.
And welcome in, everybody, to Off of the Helmets, courtesy of our friends at East Coast Sports Investors. I'm Brady Tinker. It is the week we've all been waiting for. A very long Dallas Cowboy football season. Regular season is now over. The Cowboys finish off a 12-win season, thumbs up, with a bit of a thud in Washington. But if there is mindset that is correct for this team, which I think it is, that should have zero bearing on the Monday night game in front of them. Playoff game number 1 against Tom Brady, whom they have never beaten. 7-0, unbeaten is Tom Brady against the Dallas Cowboys, no matter which team he played for. However, 0-0 in the playoffs, and those are the only games I give a damn about. The Cowboys are favored on the road at Tampa. Let's figure this thing out together. I've got lots to tell you and lots of opinions to give you, and then hopefully you'll share back with me. Coming up right now on Off of the Helmets, talking Cowboys playoff football. On Monday night, Tom Brady will become the oldest quarterback to ever start a playoff game in NFL history, breaking his own record. I don't care. As former running back Troy Hambrick once said about Emmitt Smith stepping aside in roughly 2002 or 2003, said Troy Hambrick, "I've bit my tongue, but there comes a time and a place for everybody," sort of meaning for him to step aside, greatest of all time, meh. It's my time. I'm Troy Hambrick. It took some guts. In 2003, Emmitt was gone to Arizona, and Troy Hambrick stepped in and was the lead running back for your Dallas Cowboys for the entire season. All 16 games, rushed for 972 yards on 275 carries. Quick math says 3.5 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. And it turns out maybe Troy Hambrick was a bit more of a fullback than he was an every down running back. That story really has nothing to do with anything, but it does kind of make me laugh, and it does remind me maybe it's time for Tom to step aside, and maybe the Cowboys can help usher that in. At no point during this Off of the Helmet show are we pouring through what happened or didn't happen in Week 18 in a loss at Washington that has so many of you apoplectic or at a minimum just very disappointed and feeling like same old is what's going to happen in the playoffs. This Cowboys team could have rested players in Week 17 and Week 18. If you've been watching this show, that's what I've been asking for coming up on 3 weeks. But I think there was a bit of unlucky, to be honest with you. Not very well said, but they were a bit unlucky in that the Eagles, after coming to Dallas and nearly winning that game, but the Cowboys win, the Eagles didn't win in Week 17, even without their quarterback. I thought they would. That would have been helpful for the Cowboys, because the Cowboys then would have had at least Week 18 to get people who need rest, to have more time to game plan and look at film together, and could have just essentially pushed aside whatever might happen in Washington, because we all knew it wasn't going to matter. But the truth is, the head coach could have never, in the position they were in, could have never looked at his players or the owner at 80-something years old and said, we knew the Eagles were going to lose, so we pushed aside any opportunity we had to beat Washington because we needed rest. Because mostly that's what Brady Tinker wanted. Nobody would have said that, and I would have been absolutely wrong if it had flipped the script and somehow the Giants, with nobody playing, would have beat the Eagles. Wasn't going to happen, but... So what was going on? Because the Cowboys did play everybody, and the one thing I saw coming out of this maybe was momentum. Go to Washington, beat a physical good team in something that resembles a playoff game, because Washington certainly wants to beat the hell out of the Cowboys, except that Dan Quinn was admittedly experimenting with cornerbacks throughout the game. After the game said, yeah, we tried a whole bunch of different cornerbacks in a whole bunch of different formations, some inside, some out, just to see during the playoffs, I appreciate that he was thinking about more than one game, who we could use. Okay, I get that, but wait a minute. I thought we were playing all the regulars in this game because we have to win. That doesn't sound like you were necessarily trying to win. That wasn't a walkover game. The Redskins were, the Commanders were a good football team. That wasn't a walkover game. Kellen Moore obviously didn't tell us this, but went as vanilla as he could have. And Dak's pick 6, he threw the same route or something very similar to the same route 2 passes in a row. He threw 2 seam routes down the middle in a row that looked almost exactly the same. Those are kinds of things that this offensive quarter, and no good offense in the NFL essentially ever does, and yet they did it. So if Quinn's experimenting and Kellen Moore's gone total vanilla, then we weren't really trying to win. So what was the point? That's what I'm curious about. Because in the end, it robbed a little bit of momentum. I would think you have to say. All of the Cowboys in the locker room and the fans and me and everyone else are asking, what the fuck? And why'd you play so badly? And why couldn't the offense even get hardly a first down, et cetera, et cetera? It also added plays and hits and bumps and bruises to bodies that were in their 18th week of football. Except for last year, the longest in the history of football is what this season is going to be. And this team already needed rest. Back to my opening comments, back to my comments 3 weeks ago. Give some of the older guys, my God, do you think Zeke didn't need a rest? I'll get to Micah Parsons in a minute, or Tank Lawrence with 3 injuries, or 4 or 5 other people. Certainly Pollard had a thigh issue in the last couple of weeks. All of those people could have used rest. And I'll go ahead and use Micah Parsons as an example. And I did this, I think, last week, and I may have done it the week before, but I'm hitting on it because I personally think this is a big deal. So up to date, Micah Parsons in 18 games played 919 plays. Nick Bosa, who most certainly now is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, played 746. That's 173 more plays for Micah Parsons than Nick Bosa. Yes, he's slightly younger. He's also considerably smaller, a couple of inches shorter, and between, depending on playing weight, 20 and 35 pounds lighter. A big damn deal when you're lining up, especially on the edge, trying to rush passers against 350-pound tackles. It's a big deal. That's a shocking number, to be honest with you. It's a dose of reality that the Cowboys and their defensive coordinator, who I respect so much, began to panic about this defense 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and began to put Micah out there more and more and more, and maybe even more importantly, put him out there more and more and more, either with his hand down or standing up against a tackle, right tackle or left tackle, whoever it was. They were huge, and they were among the best players on the football teams they were playing for, because we all know left tackles are among the 2 or 3 best players on most teams, especially good teams. All in or all out is what I would have said about week 18. And I told you I wasn't going to break it down, and I'm not. But the Cowboys were neither. So Monday night, the 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on the 12-5 Dallas Cowboys in the Super Wild Card round, whatever that means. Here's a topic. Is Mike McCarthy's job on the line? Doing 3 or 4 interviews this week already, I said no. Jerry was on 105.3 The Fan here locally with RJ and Sean, Bobby, and answered the question no. Started to give a little bit of an answer and said, you know what? I'm not even going to go any further. No. We've heard that before. Chan Gailey took his team to the playoffs 2 years in a row and got fired. Jerry says to this day he regrets having done that. It was the wrong decision. But that wouldn't keep him from doing it again, especially if he felt like Sean Payton could come here for the right amount of money, or if really the right person for the job is already here in Dan Quinn, who will most certainly leave, because I believe he will get a head coaching job somewhere else. It's important to him. Dan Quinn doesn't want to leave, but losing that heartbreaking Super Bowl that they were way ahead in against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or excuse me, the New England Patriots, Tom Brady, however many years ago that was, still sticks in him. And Dan Quinn feels completely ready. And being around this team, he has an effect on players and teams and an entire organization. They believe him. He puts guys in position to succeed. They play more plays. They make more money. They make more Pro Bowls, and they have more damn fun. If you ever played any team sport, would you rather sit on the bench and be part of a good team, or would you rather play and be part of a good team? Even in the smallest amount, you'd rather play. So is Mike McCarthy's job on the line? I said no. Now I will say I hope not. 24 wins in the last 2 years is the second most in back-to-back years in the history of the Cowboys. 92 and 93 teams won 25. Other than that, it's never happened. Not in Staubach's era, where they played less games, and not through Troy's era, except for the one time. It has never happened. This is impressive. The Cowboys routinely in the last 25 years don't put back-to-back really good seasons together. They have. He has the respect of the locker room, does Mike McCarthy. The Jones family obviously and apparently loves him. As a media person, listening to him, being around him a little bit and getting to know him, I have the utmost respect for him as a man, how he is grounded, how he goes about his business, how he puts into play his 20-something years worth of coaching, what he's done right and what he's done wrong, what he learned in Green Bay in the barn for a year and a half while he rebooted before he got this job. I think it's all great. And I think that all of us know in one manner or another that working for the Joneses is not the easiest thing in the world for a head coach. Jason Garrett was here for a long time because he was really good at it. Also a brilliant man. I think Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett have a lot in common as men and as the way they think as human beings. I think as coaches, Mike McCarthy is just that much better because the players really play for Mike McCarthy. They like him, they believe him, and they play hard for him. And I'm not certain at all times they felt that way about Jason Garrett. But Jerry Jones hired Mike McCarthy specifically because he remembered the Super Bowl here that he watched that Mike McCarthy won in AT&T Stadium. And in watching Mike McCarthy have a really good quarterback throughout most of his time in Green Bay, he saw a guy that could advance teams in the playoffs, that would not get to the first round with a good team, whether they had momentum or not, and bow out in the first round, because it's what's mostly happened in the last 26 years, where almost teams went 2-4. Bottom line. Well, if the Cowboys lose this game, Dak will be 1-4, and it will look similar to that. And nobody from a fan perspective, nor an 80-something-year-old owner, wants to see that. So, no, I don't think he should be fired unless they absolutely lay an egg. I hope he's not going to be fired, but he was brought to win playoff games. I thought last year as the Cowboys went into the playoffs that I saw a Dak that wasn't completely healthy nor confident about his lower extremity injuries. I thought early in the playoff game he took a header running against San Francisco with no one really threatening to get him down for maybe another 5 or 10 yards because he didn't want the hit. That guy's gone. So as much as he's led the NFL, unfortunately, in interceptions, I also see a very confident Dak. And maybe there are I'm watching a lot of people, and there's a lot of people around me who do what I do better than I do, who are saying, this isn't very good. Dak's not playing very good. I personally don't agree. The interceptions, some of them have been bad. A few of them have been terrible. Some of them haven't been his fault. And they cannot happen on Monday in Tampa. They cannot. He cannot airmail Dalton Schultz on a 12-yard throw for no particular reason to completely give up more momentum or to aid the momentum that Tampa already has. He flatly cannot do it. After that loss last year, 23-17, Jerry was pissed. Quote, I'm extraordinarily disappointed. I'm paraphrasing here. This is quite a letdown. There was steam coming out of his ears. He was not masking or holding anything back. We have really good players here. The year, he started to say, was pretty damn good, but he basically said, but it includes this game, and we didn't get it done. Again, he said, it was very disappointing. And he said, in a summation about last year's team, this is a team that would disappoint and then turn it around and really show out. But today they didn't get it done. So, all right, let's talk about that point. I don't believe this team did that. I hear him last year on some wins that you didn't think you would get, sort of typical Cowboys, and some losses that you would, and them always having to bounce back. I didn't feel that this year. When Dak got hurt in week number 1, they were dead in the water. How long would he be out? Maybe for the entire season, at least for maybe 3/4 of it. It turned out to be 6 games. But a 4-game winning streak came right on top of Dak's surgery for his hand. Also, almost a necessary injury in my mind. Not that anybody needs to get hurt, but I didn't see a guy in week 1 against Tampa in Dak Prescott that believed his lower body was ready again. I didn't see it. He looked tentative and timid in a 19-3 loss against Tampa Bay on the opening week. So in my back of my sick little mind, I'm thinking this might be good if they could win enough games to survive how long he's gone. Damned if they didn't. They win 4 games in a row. It's Cooper Rush and Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn and Micah Parsons and the best players on the team that were available stepping up, except for CeeDee Lamb wasn't very good, but he didn't have his quarterback. It culminated this season, in my opinion, on November 20th when they went upside the head in Minnesota of the Vikings 40-3. And then 4 days later, a short work week, 28-20 over the New York Giants on Thanksgiving. Now, some of you critiqued that game and didn't necessarily love it. It was 4 freaking days later, and it's 2 wins over what we now know are 2 very good playoff teams. To me, that was sort of the culmination of this season. December 5th, we find out Anthony Brown is headed to IR and will be out for the season. December 12th, Terrence Steele, the right tackle, who we're not sure if we like or not, we do, ends up hurt, and he's out for the season. Add him to Jordan Lewis, and all of a sudden your two of your starting cornerbacks are out and you're starting right tackle. Extraordinarily important positions, and 3 veterans who know what to do on an everyday basis and the adjustments to make within games. December 4th, there was an explosion in the second half against the Colts. It was kind of odd. I don't think the Colts were terrible because most of us picked them to win their division, but by that point in the season, they weren't winning very many games. And that's the game that Anthony Brown ends up hurt for the year. After that, they edge the Texans. They lose to Jacksonville, who we know is better than we thought. They stepped up against Philly and played what I thought was a pretty darn good game. Couple of turnovers notwithstanding, they played very well against a very good Philadelphia team who I knew and I told you was coming to Dallas to win, to knock out the Cowboys. Cowboys took everything Philadelphia had to give that day and won a big game. After that, they squeezed by the Texans with nothing but subs on the field and an odd loss to Washington in Week 18. And here we are, a 6-2 finish in the last 8. That's not bad, but to us, it feels sketchy. And it certainly lacks what I had wanted 4 or 5 weeks ago, because everyone wants this at the end of a season heading to the playoffs, momentum. It certainly lacks that. But nothing in an NFL season, now the longest seasons in the history of the world, ever go as planned. Those Giants teams that somehow won Super Bowls with Eli Manning, that were trending in the right way at the end of the season, were trending in the right way because they'd lost so many games at the beginning of the season, they had to win to even get in. They were forced into trending in the right way, and they played well, and they gathered that momentum, and they went. This Cowboys team has been doing very well, really, since the second game of the season. There haven't been a lot of tremendous ups and downs in terms of losses. There haven't. I don't expect the same old story, which I'm getting tired of hearing about in tweets or getting emails or shares on Facebook, whatever it may be. I know you've had 26 years of futility and of pain. There are teams across the NFL that have felt a lot worse. There are teams in the NFL that still don't have Super Bowls. You as fans won 3 in a row in the 90s. If you're younger, then I get it. You haven't tasted a lot of success, but there's been a lot of damn fun. Romo teams were fun. The Parcells era was fun. The Stack era has been fun. You just haven't won the critical games that you want to win. We're going to get to that before this show is over, because I'm with you. This is a must-win game. But NFL seasons, however they go, nothing carries over. Nothing carries over, not even for the Super Bowl champion. Because when the Super Bowl champion wins, they pick last in the draft in every round. They lose players that are getting paid or overpaid because they were on a Super Bowl team, and they have that credibility and that swagger that goes with it. And our team needs some of what those Super Bowl champions have, and they bring them over. And largely, a lot of them are overpaid. And then to finish it all off, the Super Bowl team ends up, by design, with the toughest schedule in the NFL coming back. Nothing carries over. Coaches and players have reminded me that through the years. And I would say even a feeling of confidence if the offense was number 1 in the NFL. Okay, someone would grant you a little bit. Okay, yeah. Dak's in his 7th or 8th year, and yes, they're playing really good football. And when he played, they averaged 35 a game. And CD certainly has ascended now to be a number 1 receiver in these last 8 weeks. No doubt about it. Congratulations to him, and great job, because this team needed you. That can carry over a little bit. But the bottom line is, one season to the next, nothing carries over. Point about that is 12 wins last year and a disappointing loss on a scrambling try to come back and win against San Francisco doesn't carry over to this year positively or negatively. They won 12 again, and they did it without the giant ups and downs of the season before. And this doesn't feel like the same Dak Prescott. And I'm just going to keep saying that, because the truth is, other than injuries, Dak Prescott, as we all know, is the key to everything. He's the key to everything to this point. 12 wins twice. He's the key to everything that's going to happen in this game. He wasn't very good last year in the San Francisco game. The Niners are a hell of a defense. They were last year, and they're probably better this year. So none of that was easy. So here we go again, and we take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cowboys played them, as you remember, in week number 1. It was 12-3 at half, all field goals. The Cowboys actually led 3-0 in that game. It was 19-3 at the end of the third, and the final score was 19-3. If you don't remember, they didn't lose because Dak got hurt. He got hurt very late in that game. He just wasn't very good. The Cowboys seemed somewhat flat, I think, to be honest with you, echoing or putting out the same vibe as the quarterback had. Not quite ready, not quite confident, going up against a team they damn well knew would be ready with that quarterback that they damn well knew had a pedigree of winning because they won the Super Bowl a couple of years earlier. And in week one, the Bucs were too damn much for the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys defense played pretty well. Fournette did run for 21 carries for 127 yards. Seemed like every single one of them was left, and he gashed this team over and over. That is 6 yards per carry. That's a problem. He hasn't done a whole lot since about week 5. Looks a little bit better in the next couple of weeks. That will be something this team will have to address. Tom threw for 212 yards and a touchdown and a pick. Evans was 5 for 71 on a fade route and a beautiful catch. You've seen it all before. Pollard had 6 carries for 8 yards, and we didn't even know Pollard could be or was going to be the Pollard that we know now. Zeke went 10 for 52. Dak had 134 yards a pick and an injury to his hand, and Schultz went 7 for 62. So here's what I got for you today. Let's get out of this little rotation for a minute. Leighton Vander Esch, Deron Bland, Hankins, and Tyler Biotish all practice today, Wednesday. Huge day as you get ready for a Monday night football game in the playoffs. Those guys are all in, all practicing in full. The news is all good. But that game in week 1 of this season has nothing to do with this game. Absolutely nothing, other than it was one more win that Tom has against the Cowboys that the Cowboys don't have any of. Other than that, it was a lifetime ago. Does it not seem like it? As a fan or someone who just enjoys watching the Cowboys off and on, does it not seem like 2 years ago that Dak got hurt and had surgery on his hand and that the season was over? It does to me. It seems like forever ago. What this team has fought through and overcome with Cooper Rush and Mike McCarthy and Micah Parsons has been nothing short of amazing. They could have won a couple of more games, but it's 12-5. It didn't have to be 14-3 to be really fantastic. It's really fantastic. Is momentum here that I wanted, that you were hoping for, and that we hear all teams that win Super Bowls have, which is not true? Is it here? Not so much. Are injuries here? Most of the guys that I mentioned are going to play. The rest of the guys that are out, you already know. So injuries are an issue because the Cowboys were still experimenting in week 18 with what the hell do we do at cornerback other than Diggs and Bland. And Bo, by the way, say a prayer for and thank you for Deron Bland because he leads the team in interceptions as a 5th-round pick this year. Where would you be without Deron Bland? They also have offensive line issues. All of us, including me, that know Tyron Smith or have watched him throughout his career know it's one of the baddest men to ever wear a Dallas Cowboys uniform. And when he finally got back from his injury, he ultimately and immediately volunteered and said, you know what? If it helps the team better to leave Tyler on that side and Tyron, I'll go to the right tackle. Count me in. Team player, happy to be back. I think this is a special season. I'm your guy. What's happened is it's the opposite. I've talked to L. Collins at great length and other former Cowboy offensive linemen a lot. I absolutely love learning about the offensive linemen themselves. The unit is always close and together, and they've all told me in no uncertain phrases, it's essentially a dance. We're ballet dancers that weigh 350 pounds. I know where his foot is and how his hip's going to drop and when he's going to move, and I know it. It's in my head. I don't have to see him. I know where he's at. As you begin to accumulate injuries, those things aren't as good. So you're saying, well, but it's Tyron Smith. They know him. They've known him for years. He's on the right side. And this ain't easy. Everything from drop and punch with your left side to drop and punch with your right side, which I may be wrong on all that, but essentially he's gone from left to right, is hugely different. And now when you watch film, since Tyron Smith's been back, he hasn't been very good. He doesn't necessarily look like the strongest, most badass man that I've ever met, that I knew forever. All apologies to Eric Williams, who probably that's you. But he's on the right side, and it hasn't worked great yet. And he's right next to one of the best Cowboys to ever play in Zach Martin, and that hasn't helped fix it either. So you hope that these last couple of weeks get better. You hope that Tyron can continue to, if nothing else, get in a street fight on pass blocking and give his quarterback an extra half a second or a second to throw the ball on the right side, and that he continues to get more comfortable with, in his mind, everything is backwards. It's dyslexia. He's gone from that side to that side, and it sucks, and it ain't easy, and he volunteered for the job because he knew in his own mind, I'm the best person for the job, even if I'm not very good, right? Think about that for a minute, because that's right. You've seen great athletes do the same thing in all different sports. I'll play over there thinking I'm great or have been great, and I'm tough and I'm not afraid, and I'll street fight anybody, and put me in. I'll figure this shit out. Tyron Smith is still figuring it out. So the Cowboys' running game has suffered all year. Statistically, the Cowboys' pass blocking has been among the 5 or 6 worst in the NFL. They just haven't been very good at giving Dak his full 2.5, 3 if it's phenomenal, which he kind of needs, because he doesn't necessarily get through his progressions as quickly as we want. He doesn't make his decisions quite as quickly as we want all the time. Let's just say it. I've watched film the last on Washington's game. There were throws for him to make that he didn't make because he wasn't on time. It didn't click with him quite as quickly as it should have. He didn't see it quite as clearly before he said hike as he should have. That's been his entire career. Almost everything else about him is great. So the offensive line has to hold up. Any criticism I'm offering here of Dak Prescott, too, goes, by the way, with the note of, oh, by the way, dumbass, they scored 34.2 points a game in Dak's 11 starts. Did that lead the NFL? Yes, by 4 points. That's a massive cavern. The Chiefs were at roughly 30 with the great Pat Mahomes was going to win MVP, 34.2, and that came down in the Washington game with Dak Prescott. Those are not fake numbers. Those are real numbers, and that is what has to happen for your Dallas Cowboys on Sunday in Tampa. Dak has to make the right reads. He has to avoid the interceptions. He has to fall down when he needs to fall down, throw it in the dirt when he needs to throw it in the dirt, and the defense has to pop back a little bit and be very well coached, because they don't have quite as many players, nor are they quite as healthy, or is there the bounce and the step that they had in the first 8 weeks? Nobody has that. Those things have to happen in this game. This game is back to where we were weeks 1 through 8. This is a defensive-minded team at this point. Now, that may be wishful thinking, and it may have to be an offensive-minded game. Let's just say this. The defense has to be very well coached and ready to stop frigging Leonard Fournette from running left. Be ready to get hands up, because Tom's going to get it out in 2 seconds. And if you've watched film, which they have, Tom has not been very good this year at all when pressured, when hit, when people laying around his legs, when pressured. He's hurried. He's thrown interceptions. He's had games with multiple interceptions. But he will, you can bet on this, he will pick out the cornerbacks that are filling in, okay? He's going to find Kelvin Joseph, I hope not. Nashawn Wright, probably. He's going to find Trayvon Mullen, who actually was a pretty decent addition, but just hasn't been here long enough. We'll see if he feels all right. He probably won't even shy away from Deron Blandon. I hope that he does that, and he's wrong about that. And I hope that Diggs, who was so good last year getting turnovers, can generate one for the Cowboys this week. This game is on the defense. It's on the passing side of the football. And hopefully you can get Pollard to grind out enough effective runs. I'm not pushing Zeke aside, but you're going to have to get through small holes quickly to run the football against this Tampa front defense. You just are. You're not going to line up with this offensive line in the state that it's in, with Tyron on the right side, and bang heads with Tampa and win this football game. And they ain't even going to try. But they are going to have to be effective enough, especially and specifically with Tony Pollard getting through some cracks, getting on the edges, to run the ball to where Pollard can get 80 yards. Can he get 80 yards? If he can get 80 yards and he's a threat, where he breaks a couple of 12-yarders or 15-yarders and everyone's like, shit, he almost went. If we think that, the defense thinks that as well. Those things are key. Remember, they had to win at Minnesota, and they killed them. They had to win against Philadelphia, and Philadelphia played a very good game, and they won both. They played very well in both. Time of possession in week number 1, for a second, was plus 6.5 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's what Tom's going to try and do. He's going to go back, take 2 steps, get it out in 2 seconds or less, not have to worry about Tank or Micah and the group. That's going to be the plan. Tom is going to find Nashawn Wright and Trayvon Mullen. The Cowboys averaged 1.7 sacks a game in the last 7 weeks. They were better against Joshua Dobbs and Sam Howell, but then you've never heard of them. Tom under pressure has been bad. The Tampa defense in the last 9 games, to give you a couple more stats that you'll like, have averaged giving up 225 yards a game passing, 15 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. They've not been very good. A 97.5 quarterback rating against them, 65% completion rate, and 7 yards, listen to this, not per pass attempt. Okay, so there's incompletions in there is my point. 7 yards per pass attempt. That's what Tampa's done the last 9 games. You can pass against Tampa if that offensive line can hold up to the count of 2.5 or 3. The Cowboys will go after Carlton Davis, who wasn't very good really all year, who's missed the last couple of games. He's had a shoulder issue. He's probably tender anyway. We're going to find Carlton Davis as often as we can. Dak has to protect the football. And to be honest with you, I don't think this has to be a hero Dak game. And one thing that I will think about before we go, in the last 4 or 5 weeks when Dak was having trouble with interceptions, he kept saying, and Mike McCarthy kept saying, he's going to stay aggressive. Mark my damn words, he's going to stay aggressive. And I remember thinking, good, because this team's going to need to be an offensive-driven machine at some point in the game. We're here. They average 34 points a game with Dak. He's going to have to be very good. And the bottom line is, when you look at the teams that make it through playoff games and that are good and that you know are going to win every week, and the Cowboys are one of those, they have the most good players. So Dak and Pollard and CD and Micah and Tank and Diggs, those are freaking fantastic players. And Zeke as well, if I didn't say him. And Tyron Smith, who is a mean son of a bitch who can get this thing done. Those best players have to play well. Tyler Biotish at center will return, and Kellen Moore has to get off of running on first down or running on second down and being so predictable, and I believe he will. He called a good game against the Eagles. He called a good game against Minnesota. He was ready, and Dak was ready against the best of teams in the biggest of times. I don't believe this is the last 26 years an example of that, nor that this team will fold. I don't believe that they will lose. But everybody has to do their damn job. By the way, yes, Leighton Vander Esch will also return and have everybody in the right spot. Cowboys win 27-21. And I will say it, what is for you and I and Jerry and Steven and Mike McCarthy and certainly for Dak Prescott, a must win. Because if you're not going to continue the same old shit, which I've been telling you for 15 weeks, they're not the same. If they lose again, they may begin to believe they still are the same. And this is a hump they can't get over. And they come back again with the same quarterback, and maybe they come back with the same coach, and they reboot and they try again, because that is what we do in life. But at this point, I'm with you. This is a must-win game to make 24 victories in the last 2 years truly matter. I'm Brady Tinker for Off of the Helmets. I'll be back with you on Friday before game time of Monday night, have updates with you with who's practicing and who's not, and I will talk to everyone that I know and get some more insight on why this thing's going to go the Cowboys' way or why it's not. I'll tell you the truth. I'll give you my best guess, and I always have fun doing Off of the Helmets. Thanks very much to East Coast sports investors and to you for watching. I'll see you Friday at 3 p.m. Central.